Now ahead of Game Week 8, I've asked my FPL experts for their top transfer recommendations, and this is what they've come back with. Now before we dive into today's video, if you do enjoy any of the content that you see on the channel, please be sure to like, comment and subscribe, as we are trying to hit 10,000 subscribers by the end of the calendar year, and it is only possible with your guys' help. So first off, let's start off with two players that have both been very highly recommended. It is going to be James Maddison and it is going to be Brennan Johnson. Both of these have been obviously recommended quite a bit by my FPL experts, and of course I have included them in my recent transfer target and differential video because, you know, Spurs are going on this really good run for the next 4 to 5 games. You know, they've looked very decent. They're currently sat top for XG created so far this season as well, so really good attacking side. Obviously as well, they've got some really nice priced assets, and two of those are on screen right now in James Maddison and of course Brennan Johnson. Let's start off first with James Maddison, and the reason I think he might be the better pick, because I do think it is between potentially one of the two. And I think if maybe I had Luis Diaz, I think James Maddison would be the ideal replacement, to be honest, for the next 4 to 5 game weeks. We're not 100% convinced on whether or not Phil Foden's going to be playing, so is it worth, you know, trying to find that extra mil? Not really for me, in my personal opinion, at the moment. The fixtures are definitely there. However, City have looked a little bit leggy. So I do think if you are looking to kind of keep a similar kind of price midfielder or within that budget, then I think James Maddison for me is the guy. Playing decent minutes. As we can see here, the data is really nice to go along with the attacking returns as well, and as we can see, plenty of big chances created and of course those key passes as well. Brennan Johnson has started the season exceptionally well, and I also do think he is a good asset to go for. He's getting a lot more shots off, and since he's been converted to that right hand side, which some Spurs fans have been asking for a while and have said that he's going to go on this pretty, you know, mesmeric scoring run. I think it's now 7 in 7 in all competitions for club and country at the moment. Obviously scored in Wales' last international game. Now, something that obviously might potentially be a concern is the fact that he did go off half-time in that game. Wales do have another game on Monday night, so if he plays in that one, we know he's back. If he's not, then of course we do have to wait for Postecoglou's comments, but he is a very open manager and probably will give us some update regarding his fitness. Speaking of Postecoglou, in his last kind of press conference, he did give us some information towards Richarlison, Son, and I think it's Obert, the guy they signed from Burnley as well. All players that obviously can feature in these wider positions on the right or on the left. And this is where I think it does get a little bit more tricky for Brennan Johnson. The quality that Spurs have within that front three, outside Dominic Solanke, who's probably competing with Richarlison. Let's be real, but Richarlison can play on the right as well. We've seen that at times with Everton and at Spurs as well. But I think that is probably the thing that would put me off going for maybe Brennan Johnson, is this slight injury issue. And of course, it is the amount of competition that is going to be in those places as well. I feel James Maddison within that 10 role is a lot more secured, and I don't think there's as much competition for his place, and I do feel like he, for that extra 1.1 million, is going to be the better pick out of the two. But let me know what you think, and let me know which way you're thinking of potentially going in the comments section. Let's keep going. Let's take a look at the next player that was heavily recommended. Again, it is going to be Bryan Mbeumo. I think he's featured in probably the last 4 or 5 of these FPL Experts videos. He is currently the top transferred in player so far for Game Week 8, and there's no real surprise, to be honest. Look at the start of the season. He's had 7 goals, 6 assists, and the great fixtures coming up as well. Manchester United have been very defensively questionable this season. Then they've got Ipswich, Fulham, Bournemouth, Everton. It is just a great run for a player that takes penalties, plays 90 minutes, can play up front or on the right, or sometimes even on the left as well, is delivering the goods and putting up good data to go with it. So for me, if you haven't already got Bryan Mbeumo or you're on a wild card, he probably would be one of the first names that I would be looking to buy ahead of James Maddison for me, in my opinion. I just think Bryan Mbeumo is that good. The fixtures are there. And I think with those a penalty appeal as well, which, you know, James Maddison doesn't have, I do feel that is a massive plus. So again, if I was on the market for a Diaz replacement, it probably would go Bryan Mbeumo number 1, then James Maddison in that number 2 slot. So yeah, if you haven't got Bryan Mbeumo, what are you doing? Get yourself out there, because I do feel like his ownership is only going to increase across this great set of fixtures. Ipswich at home, one of the worst defences so far this season as well. Fulham and Bournemouth might be a little bit more tricky, but Everton away is still, it's just good fixtures for a player player that plays decent minutes. So I cannot argue with my FPL experts on this one. Moving on, let's head into the next two players. It is going to be that cheaper forward bracket. Obviously, a lot of people have been talking about Chris Wood and his impressive start to the season. 7 goals for 7 appearances, 4 goals for him. As we can see here, decent underlying data, and has now been confirmed as the Nottingham Forest penalty taker as well. So for getting him in for that 6.1 million price bracket, he could be a really, really good forward. The Forest next 3 fixtures as well are pretty appetising from an attacking perspective. All of these teams are within the bottom half for XG conceded. So Nottingham Forest here could go on a pretty good run and potentially score quite a few goals. Obviously, we've been looking at some of their defensive assets and seeing how shrewd they've been in that regard. And I do think Chris Wood could also be an absolutely fantastic pickup. As we can see here, plenty of shots in the box, plenty of decent expected goals to go with it. And I do think with the positive fixtures coming up, we will see a few more Chris Wood goals going in. So it could be a great enabling forward within that bracket. Next to him is going to be a man that is starting to receive a little bit more love. I feel in game week 7, you know, some people are starting to jump on the bandwagon. And now I feel in game week 8, definitely a lot more people are. And we've seen that with a price increase for Delap. And the only reason I'm not keen on Delap is watch some of his goals. Like 2 of them have been from outside the box, screamers. Nothing really like concrete. And as you can see from his underlying data as well, it just isn't exciting me. It really, really isn't. The thing that is exciting me though is of course those fixtures. There is a great run coming up for Ipswich. And I do feel like, you know, if they are going to have any chance of staying in the Premier League this season, they will be needed to pick up points across this great set of fixtures. So Delap could be an option at 5.6, but I think I would rather go for Raul Jimenez, playing for a more attacking Fulham side that I feel control games a lot better. If we obviously look towards his data as well, it is miles better than Delap as well. I do feel he's probably been a little bit fortunate in terms of his goal scoring so far this season, and I do think we will see a drop off from him in his overall performance. So I'm not going to recommend Delap. I wasn't too keen on him game week 7. My thoughts still haven't changed, despite him obviously getting 2 goals in game week 7. So that's what I'm going to say. I just don't like Delap as an option. I would prefer going for a Chris Wood or, of course, a Raul Jimenez in my opinion. But, you know, if you disagree, get it in the comments section. Let's move on. Let's take a look at another player. Again, very highly recommended and for very, very good reason. It is going to be Cole Palmer. Obviously, he's smashing it the past few weeks. 6 goals, 5 assists in 7 appearances. Good underlying data to go with it. Now, the fixtures, that's where things obviously start to get a little bit interesting. I spoke about this in my transfer targets video. I said the Liverpool fixture, now that Alisson is out, feels like a much better fixture for me in my personal opinion. I think he was 3rd for prevented goals last season amongst all goalkeepers. So that shows the importance. And we've seen it time and time again, how many times he does bail Liverpool out in games and obviously has to go and make big saves. And I do think that will impact this Liverpool side. Prior to that, obviously my views were that Liverpool are top for XG conceded. They've looked very, very defensively comfortable under Arne Slot, and I don't think I could see things changing. However, with that goalkeeper injury, I do expect a little bit of a drop-off, so it's not the worst fixture in the world in terms of Cole Palmer. Then they've got Newcastle and United. I think they're great fixtures. Not going to argue with those. Arsenal will be a difficult one again, and then after game week 12, they go on that blistering run, and that definitely would be the point that I would be looking to jump onto that Cole Palmer train. So if you do fancy a little bit of a gamble over the next few with some definite difficult fixtures coming up, especially those Liverpool and Arsenal fixtures, they're going to be the difficult ones. I feel the Newcastle United ones should be fine for Cole Palmer, but if you do fancy taking maybe a little bit of a gamble during these fixtures, get ahead of people ahead of game week 12, maybe you're going to be potentially priced out of a move around game week 12, or you know, you're potentially not going to have the budget or anything like that, it could be worth maybe taking a little bit of a gamble, going early on Cole Palmer. But I am warning you now, those fixtures don't look as good as they potentially seem. So that's all my advice is going to be on that one. I think for me personally, I'm going to wait until around game week 12 to go and buy Cole Palmer back, but I understand why people might want to get in early to this party. Finishing up, of course I covered this in my transfer targets video. It is the cheap defenders option. Now again, quite a few names on this list were mentioned by my FPL experts, so I thought, you know what, let's use this list. It's got a whole host of cheap defenders on here. Let's pick some of my favourite ones and talk about each player on here. James Justin, I'm just going to start off and say I don't think he's a good option. 0.4 expected goal involvement. It is the lowest on this list out of all the cheap defenders. Projected points are okay-ish. The fixtures are okay-ish, but they're 2 decent fixtures, are both away from home, and of course that is going to mean a a decreased probability of a clean sheet. So I think for me, Justin is an avoid. I think if you had him earlier, great. If you've already got him in your team, that's fine. Just keep him for these decent fixtures. In terms of transfer in though, I am not going to recommend him being an option. Collins and Van der Berg, I want to kind of clump together as the Brentford defenders. I definitely would be looking to invest into that Brentford defence. We saw with Brian and Mbeumo the great fixtures coming up. And the reason I really like the Brentford defence isn't because of the clean sheet data. That's been a little bit stinky so far this season. The reason I like them is the fact that they basically, I would say, they set up in a way where they look to gain maximum kind of value in set pieces. We've seen it with the kickoffs in the past few weeks. There's a great video circulating on YouTube at the moment where it talks about how Brentford are managing to utilise an undervalued part of the game, kickoffs. No one's ever thought of, using kickoffs to gain an advantage. They're doing it. They're doing it super successfully. They have been doing this with free kicks and corners. And I do feel if they find or kind of manoeuvre a tweak or kind of find a way to do it, the centre-backs will be the main beneficiaries of that because they'll be the ones scoring. They take long throws as well. So I do feel investing in the Brentford centre-backs could be worth a little bit of potential consideration. Some decent fixtures as well and decent projected goals. And of course, those expected goal involvement for Collins as well. Van der Ven, again, could be a decent option. We saw with the Spurs fixtures, they're decent, but I do feel there's probably better names on this list. Big fan of the Forest fixtures, big fan of the Forest defence as well. Third for expected goals conceded so far this season. Some great fixtures coming up, like I said. Also, Milinkovic has been, asked him to a few of my comments. I also think he's a decent shout. Murillo as well also fits into that bracket with Aina as well. Moreno probably is the one that I would be a little bit more skeptical of. I think when they are looking to defend games, he's the one that comes off. And obviously, if certain things aren't looking as well, he did come off in a half-time a few weeks ago as well. So he's probably the biggest gamble out of the list. The rest of them, though, for me, definitely worth some consideration. Nori, I think, is a great pickup. Obviously, you are going to have to bench him for game week 8. Game week 9 is not the easiest either, but post that, game week 10 and beyond is a great set of fixtures coming up for Wolverhampton Wanderers. 4.4 million could be a steal. The only thing that I would point out is the fact that he is on 3 yellow cards. He picks up a 4th in that City game. Then, of course, you are treading water, as I don't think they reset until around maybe Christmas time. Somebody could potentially correct me in the comments, but I do believe it is a long time till those yellow cards do reset. So that could be potentially a little bit of a banana skin. Maybe if he picks them up in 8 and 9, great, but it's a bit of a gamble. That's the only thing with Nori at the moment. Other than that, though, his expected goal involvement is fantastic. His positioning, excellent. Watch a Wolves game, whack on match of the day, and you will be astounded some of the positions this lad gets himself into. Then, same goes with another player that fits into that bracket. It is going to be Rico Lewis. I was actually a little bit surprised how low his expected goal involvement is on this list, 1.11. It's still decent. I do feel like he is, though, getting into those right positions for such a cheap and undervalued asset for me, in my opinion, and that is why I would have him so highly on the list. You're getting into one of the best defences historically throughout the course of the Premier League. Now, they have looked a little bit more leaky since, of course, the Rodri injury, and we have seen games without Rodri and games with Rodri, they actually have lost a lot more without Rodri being in the side. So it's definitely going to have an impact on their defensive numbers. And of course, stuff like that is going to obviously play into Rico Lewis's points and stuff like that. But it is that attacking potential. It is the good fixtures for the next 4. It could be worth the gamble. Leif Davis, man, this is mind-blowing, some of the data that he's putting up. He's actually got the highest predicted points across this list. I think it's because of the great fixtures as well to go with that. Everton and Leicester at home, definite great fixtures to be playing Leif Davis in. As we can see here, the expected goal involvement 1.7, only 1 attacking return so far this year. So again, for me, he feels like he could be a really good pickup, but buying into one of the worst defences in the league does seem like a little bit of a risk. You are hoping that he can manage to go and get an attacking return in every single game, which isn't out of the realms of possibility. I would just be kind of a little bit more cautious and maybe say, hey, look, they are one of the worst defences in the league. I don't think they're going to pick up too many clean sheets across the course of this season. You are going to be hoping and banking on those attacking returns, and it could potentially fall in maybe some of the more difficult games rather than some of these easier fixtures where you would be tempted to play him. Those were my picks from my FPL experts. Let me know what you think of them down in the comment section. If you've got any questions about your team as well, get them in, as we will try to answer as many as we possibly can. But thank you very much for watching today, ladies and gentlemen, and good luck in Game Week 8.